just skills that you can apply day in and day out in your life. I use these skills that you're going to hear about every day, and it helps me show up as the best version of myself. I'm a better father, husband, brother, son, coach, all these things because I'm practicing these wellness skills all the time. And I take my personal wellness seriously. That is something that, I would advocate that we all do, taking your personal wellness seriously, because a lot of us may be um, serving people and working on behalf of others and things like that, or trying to help people as much as we can, and you can't really help from an empty cup. So making sure that you keep yourself well is very, very important. So I'm going to jump into a bit of a presentation and we'll go from there. But what I want you to know is that this evening is a conversation. So uh, feel free to chime in anytime, ask questions at any point, things of that nature. And let me go here. All right, there we go. Party is now started. So once again, I'm going to talk to you about the community resiliency model. And the model was developed by a lady named Elaine Miller Karras. She's an awesome, awesome human being, one of my mentors. And once again, my name is Kevin McLeod. I'm going to jump into it. I love the exercise that I came on the call and just, identifying, what joys, what beauty is in your life. And so I want to give you the opportunity to do the same thing. So feel free to, in the chat, just answer one or all three of these questions. What or who uplifts you? What or who gives you strength? And what or who helps you get through hard times? Looking
My
back.
son.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, my son and my best friend.
Yes, definitely. Anyone else? What or who uplifts you? What or who gives you strength? What or who helps you get through hard times? Let's see what I see. My husband helps me get through hard times. What else? My faith and my family. Exactly. My mother and children. That's good stuff. Good stuff. Go
Good
ahead.
weather. Good weather. Like when the sun is shining,
Mm-hmm.
it makes me feel so much better when the weather is really nice.
Mm-hmm. Just noticing that. Yes. I see also my friends. I've got really good, great ones. That's wonderful. Knowing that you have a good group of people in your circle. Adrian, I don't know what that is.
Oh, I agree with Ruth.
Okay. Awesome. I'm sorry. Catch me up. Teach me something today. Awesome. I'm gonna move forward and just talk to you briefly about resiliency. And this is Elaine's definition. I'm going to ask you all in a moment just to give me two or three words or a couple of phrases that you know that come to mind when you think of resiliency. But here she has resiliency as an individual's and community's ability to identify and use individual and collective strengths in living fully with compassion in the present moment and to thrive while managing the activities of daily living. I love this definition. It's a lot of words in it, but basically you use what you have or your circle, the people around you, the things around you. You use those strengths to live fully in the present moment and to thrive while managing the activities of daily living. Um, so I look at this group, Step Up to just being here tonight. We've got people that have individual uh, strengths and abilities and things like that, but the group also has strengths and abilities. And at one time or another, an individual may need to depend on a group, or that group may need to depend on an individual in order to manage the activities of daily living. And so, with this definition of resiliency, it doesn't speak to things being perfect. It doesn't speak to things being ideal. It doesn't speak to any of that, but it speaks to people living fully in the present moment. So, looking back at 2020, 2020 was crazy. I'm a parent of two girls. I've got a 15-year-old and I've got a 7-year-old. And to, even taking a step back, looking into their lives and looking into, how their schooling was disrupted, how their normal circles, the social circles, the things that they were normally doing, all that was disrupted. Work was disrupted, all sorts of things happen. And stepping back, but then also going back to these questions to find out what else is true. All right. What or who uplifts you? What or who gives you strength? What or who helps you get through hard times? Because there were a number of hard times, last year and things like that. And as I talk to you about resilience today, um, there were some times that I myself wasn't that resilient, that I had to, use these skills intentionally to make sure I was showing up as the best version of myself and all that. So, as you look at this definition, just what comes to mind briefly? You can type it in the chat or you can come off mute. When we talk about resilience, what comes to mind for you?
Music.
Mm, okay, bouncing back. I got music. What else?
Pictures.
Pictures.
Photographs.
What are in those photographs?
Just going through photographs brings me peace.
I want you to have that, hold on to that thought when I get to the scale of resourcing, because I want you to repeat exactly what you just said. What else? What else? What comes to your mind when you think about resilience?
I
word
think,
that always
go ahead.
a word that always comes to my mind is adaptability with resiliency. And like thinking like you're going down a river, you can't fight the river, but you can go with the flow, and you can adapt to what comes at you. And sometimes you can turn it to a strength, or you can use it to your benefit somehow.
Thank you so much for that. That's a great analogy. Great analogy.
Yeah, I think having a plan and surviving and sort of expecting things to go wrong and operating when things are going wrong, not just being strong and achieving things when things are going right.
Very good.
Yeah, it's been so hard, and reaching out to friends that I know I had a lot of friends that were super depressed because they weren't working. We're not interacting. And so when I finally would hear from them, and I wouldn't push them, so I would just text them every once in a while because I didn't want to really press them. But when I finally got responses, it was really awesome. And I don't know if that makes me resilient, but I would just keep at it. And now I've had way more responses because I found that a lot of people were really, really depressed about not working. Which I was as well for a while, but then I was working. But I think working is such a component of your life and existing and paying your bills that when you're not working, it can really bring you down. So when people I knew are finally working again, are able to work, it made me really, really happy. I mean, I was really, really down when I realized that a lot of my friends were not working and really depressed and not reaching out.
Yeah. And what I can say,
it was really hard.
Yeah. And what I can say to that is that makes sense. All of that makes sense. Some of the things that took place, even people not being in the best of moods and their reactions and their responses to things, with all of those, with all that happened in 2020 and maybe even some things carrying over into 2021, that makes sense. And I tell people that it makes sense that your nervous system is going to respond in that way because XYZ is going on. And that puts us in, to this slide here where we talk about this perspective shift. So conventional thinking will have you that, oh, people are just bad. Oh, that person's just angry. Oh, they just have attitude. Oh, they did that. They need to be punished. Or, oh, people just don't care. Or even, oh, we need to stop making excuses for people. They should be better. Or what's wrong with you? What's wrong with that person? But then what the trauma-informed lens does is it puts, just another way of looking at issues on the table. So, okay, people are suffering. Many people care, but they lack understanding and skills. Or we need to learn how trauma impacts a child and adult's development, or what happened to you. So it shifts from what's wrong with you, looking at it like, oh, that person is this. They have this. They have, this mental health issue, whatever. No, what happened to you? Well, what happened to a lot of us last year is we were dealing with the fallout of a pandemic, and we were dealing with uncertainty in all areas of our lives. Whether it's personal, professional, things of that nature. So that's the answer to that. But then when you move on and transition to the resiliency informed and resiliency focused elements, just knowing that people are resilient and people need our compassion as they learn new skills, and that anybody can learn self-regulation skills based on science. And we need to learn how skills of well-being can reduce suffering. And then ultimately, what is right with you? What are your strengths? And for me, someone can tell me as much or as little about, what happened to them. What I want to know about is, how did you make it through? What or who gave you strength in that difficult time? And that's different ways of looking at it. Like someone may want to tell you this happened to me and this happened to me, this happened. That's cool. That has its place. And we might need to go through that at some point. But really, how did you make it through? Let's focus on that. Let's focus on you made it through and how did you make it through? And intentionally cultivating that wellness by deciding what we're going to pay attention to. So with the community resiliency model, the focus is on biology and not mental weakness. We focus on the biology of the nervous system. And as I said before, just the phrase, that makes sense that your nervous system caused you to respond that way. And there's common human reactions to stressful and traumatic events that affect the mind, body, and spirit. Like in 2020, people may have shortened tempers, or they may have been, sad or depressed more often, things like that, because the world was turning upside down. That makes sense. We don't need to pathologize people. We don't need to assign some, diagnostic label to them. They are going through a time, a period, and we all went through this time and period that impacted us. And what we do, with the community resiliency model, we help individuals learn to read their nervous system and return back to the zone of well-being, what we call the resilient zone, through simple wellness skills.
Can I ask you a question?
Go ahead.
So what are you saying is mental weakness?
So someone someone responding to the pandemic and they may not want to deal with other people. They may isolate themselves, or they may be really sad, or they may be angry. They may be quicker to anger than they were in the past. And what I teach people is like, this is about your biology. This is how we are made. Not that, oh, you're weak, you're angry, you're a bad person because you're experiencing these things. No, you're experiencing them for a reason. But what we can do is teach you some wellness skills so that you can still show up as the best version of yourself from the best parts of yourself. And as we get to the concept of the resilient zone in a few more slides, that'll become more clear. But that's what we mean with when we talk about this is biology, not human weakness. We focus purely on what your nervous system is capable of.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. And so here are common reactions to stress and trauma. These are common reactions during and after a stressful or traumatic event. So I want you to take a look at this. Take a look at the thinking domain and picture these circles as domains in your life. So the thinking domain is, and there's my daughter in the back. The thinking domain, you've got paranoid, you've got nightmares, you've got dissociation, you've got forgetfulness, poor decisions. How often have we asked about someone, why do they keep making that same stupid decision over and over? Or forgetfulness. Oh, you forgot this again. Oh, you forgot that. I tell teachers a lot, people that are instructing others and they have, expectations when that person comes to class or whatever. If someone is going through something, they may not remember to bring their pencil. They may not remember to bring their bag or that notepad or that thing that they need in that particular moment. Maybe showing up is enough for them in that moment. But these are all byproducts these are common reactions of stressful and traumatic situations. Go on to the emotional domain. You've got rage, fear, you've got avoidance, you've got depression, grief, guilt, shame, apathy, just lack of caring, or you may have anxiety. I'm going to go on to the relational domain because this is one that was particularly important to me. Being angry at others, isolating, once again, missing work, being overly dependent on others, or just being downright irritable. All of these are common reactions to stress and trauma. And so where I was talking in the previous slide, where someone would be, oh, what's wrong with that person? What's wrong with them that they're always acting like this? What's wrong? And then you transition to the trauma informed. Okay, what happened to them to make them react and respond this way? Then you move on over to the resiliency informed. Okay, what's right with them? What is this person's strengths? What do they have going on that they can leverage? So, looking at, some of your definitions of resilience, bending but not breaking, being unbreakable, being able to bounce back, all those things when it comes to, stress and trauma, because we can't avoid these things sometimes. The beautiful thing, though, about human being is that we also have post-traumatic resiliency reactions. So these are some things that are also common. So where we have the domains in the previous slide, these are some things that can also happen. So you may just have resilience, or you may have strength and courage, renewed relationships, gratitude, or you may be an advocate for certain things. You have an appreciation for loved ones. I definitely have an appreciation for my family. I'm the youngest of four, and I'm excited anytime my siblings and I can get together. It's a whole party, and then some. And we haven't been able to do that consistently lately. And I'm yearning for those moments. So I can't wait for that to happen. And so I'm going to appreciate that even more when the time comes. And the big thing about this slide and also this slide is letting people know we have the capacity to hold both as human beings. We have the capacity to hold these very negative things and these very negative reactions and things like that. And then we also have, the capacity to hold these positive ones. Going back to this slide, these are
No.
adaptive behaviors. We've got, stimuli in our environment. We've got situations that happen. We've got circumstances that may cause us to travel down this line, but know that we can also respond in this way. I'm going to skip this next slide and not talk about ACEs just in regard to time. But so the community resiliency model is based on, laws of nature. Just the natural rhythms in nature also exist in the human nervous system. And so we don't have to be trapped by the storms of our body, sensations of discomfort and pain. We can draw attention to the sensations of well-being and transform our experience. So as we begin, with those questions, what or who uplifts you? What or who gives you strength? What or who helps you get through hard times? Those questions, those types of questions, or even as, Bobby was taking you through the exercise, asking you about the joys in your life and where have you found beauty lately? That's intentional. That's getting you to draw attention to those things that can grant you the sensations of well-being and can transform your experience for that moment. This model is also based on scientific research about the brain. So there's a concept called neuroplasticity, and it's a lifelong ability for the brain to change and rewire itself in response to stimulation of learning and experience. So this gives us hope. So if you are responding to something, if you've responded to this particular situation the same way for the last 5 years, what neuroplasticity says is if you try, you will eventually be able to respond differently. You're just giving yourself opportunities to learn and to grow. And so that's where the wellness skills come into play. By intentionally practicing these wellness skills and using them in your life, you have the ability to react and respond differently, especially in situations where in the past you would have maybe exploded or been really sad or depressed. In neurogenesis, it's the ability to create new neurons and connections between neurons throughout a lifetime. So what neuroplasticity and neurogenesis mean to me is basically, in creating these new habits in my mind and in my nervous system, it's like walking a new path. And as you walk that new path, you're going to have to, walk it over and over a few times for it to start wearing in to create that new pathway. And that's what happens. And so Carla Schatz has a quote that says, brain cells that fire together, wire together. So as you practice these things, just practice the wellness skills and notice how they help to regulate your nervous system. That is, weaving that new neural pathway that's making the brain cells fire together and ultimately wire together. the community resiliency model is based off of anatomy and physiology. So just with anatomy, this the structures and body parts in relationship to one another, and then physiology is the functions of the body. And so we observe and just take in the knowledge of the patterns of the nervous system and help people learn to distinguish between sensations of distress and sensations of well-being. This is where I would have you do an exercise or activity if it wasn't 6:45 in the evening. But we basically track our autonomic nervous system, and our autonomic nervous system is broken into two parts. You've got your sympathetic and your parasympathetic. So your sympathetic prepares you for action. So say something scares you and you get that shot of adrenaline and your heart rate goes up, your breathing rate may go up. Your body is preparing itself for action. And at that point, your digestion and your saliva goes down because you don't need to be digesting that nice chicken sandwich that you had earlier at that point because your body is preparing for action. And then you have the parasympathetic that prepares you for rest. So you've got the sympathetic preparing you for action. The parasympathetic, I also call it the parachute, that's slowing you down, preparing you for rest. And so here your breathing rate may go down, your heart rate, your pupils constricting, your stress hormones go down, and then your digestion and your saliva pick back up. So the sympathetic being the accelerator, the parasympathetic being a brake, it's supposed to work in balance. There are times where the sympathetic should be preparing you for action. And then there are other times where your parasympathetic should be preparing you for rest. And like anything else, when this gets out of balance, that's when we'll start to have issues and things like that. And you'll hear more about it when I get into the resilient zone. But facts about the community resiliency model: this model can be used across the lifespan. You can be 5 or 115 across cultures, because what's meaningful for people across cultures is I'm asking people about things that are meaningful to them. I'm not assigning meaning to anything that a person has in their life. What they're doing is they're giving that information to me, and then we're focusing on how that helps to keep them well. It can be used with different literacy abilities. You don't have to know how to read or write to use the skills in this model. So the key concept, number one, if there was a pop quiz after this, this is what would be on it. The resilient zone, or the OK zone. Ultimately, the goal is to widen our resilient zone. So think of this as two lines. And throughout our day, we're kind of on this wave, this ebb and flow. So there's things that we have to get more charged up to do and things that we're less charged to do. There's things that cause us a little bit more stress and things that cause us less stress. And we're kind of ebbing and flowing throughout our day. And being in the resilient zone, it's not a perfect place of zen and peace. It's not, everything is all good. It's not all sunshine and unicorns, anything like that. We can be a little bit excited. We can be worried in our resilient zone. We can be calm. We can be tired. We can be sad. We can be okay angry. We can be okay happy, or we can be okay scared. But going back to the analogy that was given earlier, it's like you are going with the flow. If you're in that river, you're not washed away by that river. You haven't gotten thrown onto the banks or anything like that. You're still just flowing. You're handling. When I'm in my resilient zone, I can adjust, I can manage, I can pivot and change if I need to, if the situation calls for it. But it doesn't have to be perfect. So you can be in any of these states when you're in your resilient zone. Now, the issue is if we have a traumatic or stressful event or a stressful or traumatic reminder and we get bumped out of our zone. So if you get bumped out of your zone high, that looks like edgy, irritable behavior or mania, anxiety or panic, or an angry outburst, or maybe even some pain. That's what it looks like to get bumped out high. Getting bumped out low, or going to the low zone, as we call it, that looks like depression or sadness or being isolated. It looks like exhaustion or fatigue. The weight of the world is on your shoulders, or just numbness. The days where you're like, I can't get out of bed today. And what I want you to know is that both of these states are perfectly normal. Our nervous system has the capacity to go here for a reason. There may be times in our life where we have to get bumped out of our zone high and have an angry outburst or be edgy or irritable because we need to protect ourselves in that moment or someone we love. Then there's times in our life where it's perfectly appropriate for us to be depressed or sad, depending on what has happened or transpired. We may be grieving a loved one, or something to that effect. That's perfectly normal. It's getting stuck here that is the issue. It's normal to get bumped out high zone or low zone. And so I'm going to ask you all right now, when you get bumped out of your zone, do you typically get bumped out high? Do you typically get bumped out low, or is it a combination of both? You can add it into the chat, or you can come off mute.
This is Michael. It's usually high for me.
Okay. I got low in the chat. I see, and Michael says high. For me, I typically go high, then I'll go low, then I'll go back high, maybe low again, and I can tell. And so, knowing about my resilient zone is freeing, though, because your nervous system has the ability to go here for a reason. It's just getting stuck here. That's an issue. The other thing is I use my wellness skills because it's important for me to be in my resilient zone as much as possible, especially when I'm dealing with people. Because if I'm in my high zone and I'm interacting with people, I'm interacting from a place of pride. I'm interacting from a place of trying to be right. I'm interacting from a place of spite. I'm just trying to prove people wrong, and I'm not coming from the best parts of myself. Or if I'm in my low zone, I'm operating from a place of apathy. I don't care. Oh, I don't care what happens next. It doesn't matter anyway. You understand what I'm saying about that? So it's important to know if you're out of your zone so that you don't make decisions or you don't behave in a way that's going to compromise you sometime down the line, or compromise a relationship or something like that. So what these skills have done for me is, other than humble me in a huge way, they've helped me to, like I said, show up as the best version of myself from the best parts of myself. Like me operating out of spite or out of apathy, that's not Kevin coming from the best parts of himself. That's me being subject to the high zone or the low zone.
So I get in a weird zone. Like, so my whole family knows that I always get hysterical and start laughing at funerals. It's really bizarre. So I'm always laughing at funerals, but my family knows it and they try to cover it up. It's kind of funny. By the way, Vaughn, my cousin that's here, his mom was like, I remember her handing me tissue thinking I was like crying, but I was like laughing. So it was like a bizarre, it's a bizarre reaction I have, especially at funerals. It's awful.
That's your nervous system releasing.
It's just like, but my family at least knows it, so that they don't like take it personally when I'm laughing at funerals. But I know people don't accept that really. And I don't even know why I do it. I just picture like funny moments when I'm at a funeral, and then I start laughing, and it's just a nervous reaction, I'm guessing.
That's your nervous system releasing, because those are very high stress situations, and being in a situation where people are grieving and there's lots of sadness and things like that, for me, there's a lot of pressure in those situations.
Yeah.
And my nervous system could get overwhelmed in that regard. And so, you're laughing at that point in time, maybe just your nervous system releasing. And so as we talk about these skills, I want you to think about some of the skills that you can use for yourself in those types of situations and see how you can apply them. And as we talked about, a moment ago, just laying those new pathways, it may not work in the beginning, but eventually if you keep at it, it'll work, and you'll find yourself showing up differently in those types of environments. Thank you for sharing. So people have different resilient zones. And I've talked to folks and they're like, oh, Kev, I've got a resilient line. It's not even a zone, it's a line. I was like, all right, well, let's work. Let's get it. Let's spread it out a little bit further and further, things like that. But there may be days that you have a more narrow resilient zone. It can be different from day to day. If you are tired, if you are hungry, if you are in pain, if it could be a number of things that are going on where you may have a more narrow resilient zone, and even small stressors can bump you out of your zone. Or there may be days where your resilient zone is wider and you have greater capacity to deal with, stressful situations. And just know that. So know that your resilience zone could be different from day to day, and pay attention to that. Pay attention to, oh, I think I'm getting a bit aggravated right now. I'm getting ready to be bumped out of my zone, or not. You're like, oh, today is a good day and this, and this happened, but, I'm still making things happen. So I just want to ask everybody right now to either come off mute or add it in the chat. Where are you right now? Are you in your resilient zone, or are you in your high zone or low zone?
This is Kashmir, by the way. I'm personally in my resilient zone.
Thank you, Kashmir. All right.
This is Bobby. This is Bobby Harrington. I'm in my, I would say right now, this moment, today, anyway, I'm in my resilient zone.
Mm-hmm. All right. I see a couple lows. I see some resilient zone, things like that. If you are in your low zone, I just invite you to think about, the questions before. What or who uplifts you? Or when you've been in your low zone before, what have you done? Or what did you read? Who did you talk to? What did you look at to help you get out of that zone? Thank you all for sharing. So the community resiliency model guide, is a person that shares their wellness skills with others. So right now I'm a community resiliency model guide. And what I'm going to talk to you about are these skills. So there are 6 skills within a community resiliency model. Tracking is the main skill in the model. Tracking is the main skill. You are tracking when you are doing all of the other skills. So we've got tracking, resourcing, grounding, help now, shift and stay, and gesturing. Today, we'll probably be able to get to tracking, resourcing, grounding, and help now.
So I have a question.
Okay.
So when I'm working and my boss is, I don't know if she's ADD or whatever. Anyway, so when she jumps into, I work in a restaurant. So when she jumps into the line with the cooks, she messes everything up. She's constantly like, how should I say it? So she'll say one thing 1 minute and another thing the next. Sorry, that's my dog. And so it's really hard to get her, because I can do the thing she tells me to do and then she changes it the next minute. But I found now that with my age, I don't have any, I'm tired of it. And so I don't take it very well.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? It's like,
I do.
She tells me one thing 1 minute and then switches it the next minute. And I'm so sorry. My dog is like barking.
Oh, you're fine. I get your question. And that is.
But it's like, I don't know how to deal with it, because I can't really talk back at her.
Mm-hmm. And so my recommendation for you is to do whatever you can to stay in your resilient zone. Because as I was saying before, using these skills, using these wellness skills and applying them will help you to show up as the best version of yourself at that moment, despite what may be going on around you. And as you know, like, we can't always control other people, but we can notice ourselves. And as we go into this first skill of tracking, which is reading the sensations, tracking helps you know where you are in your resilient zone. And by tracking, and so what you're doing when you're tracking is you're noticing or paying attention to sensations. You're noticing what's happening on the inside in the present moment. So for your example, as your boss is coming in there and she's jumping on the line and she's, giving out orders, trying to be helpful or whatever, if you're noticing what's happening on the inside and noticing, oh, I'm getting bumped out of my zone, then you have a choice to use a skill. Okay, I'm going to use this skill of grounding. I'm going to get to grounding in a moment. Oh, I'm going to use a skill of grounding intentionally so that I can stay in my resilient zone. So I don't say something that I shouldn't say, in this time. And then maybe after we're done in this moment, I can go have a conversation and say, hey, when you do X, Y, Z, this is how it impacts me. And having that conversation when you're in your resilient zone versus having it when you've been bumped out of your zone. Like I said before, like if I'm in my high zone, I'm having conversations out of spite. I'm being combative. I'm trying to be right. And nothing else really matters other than those things if I'm in my high zone. But if I'm in my resilient zone, I care about how my communication is coming across. I care about, am I saying the things that I need to say to get my point across, but also being receptive enough to listen and understand what's going on.
I understand that, but the thing is that she's and I'm sorry, maybe I sound really negative, but we've all talked about this at work, and it's like, so it's really hard to approach her because then she just fires you. When you don't agree with her, she fires you, and it's like it's a weird situation, and and she's also very I mean, honestly, it's not just me. It really pisses me off because how she treats undocumented workers, because she doesn't pay them the same that she does everybody else. And I know she knows what she's doing. And it pisses me off. And she talks to them in a certain way that really makes me mad. So it's not even as much about me, because I can take that kind of shit, like when she talks to me. But then it's other people. But then I try to talk to them, but they're really scared because they're like, well, we won't have a job. And that's what happens. And it's very debilitating for most of the people that work there.
Yeah. And so what I tell people a lot of times when I'm teaching these skills and I'm teaching the model is having these skills is not going to keep the storms in life from coming at you, but you will be different in the storm. And there can be various things. There could be the boss, there could be the spouse, the friend, there could be a lot of different situations that are taking place. But once you know you have a resilient zone and you know there's things that can bump you out of your zone, but then also you've got some skills that can help you get back in your zone or stay in your zone, using that intentionally to your advantage is so helpful. So this skill of tracking that we're talking about, noticing what's happening on the inside, it's the GPS of where you are in your resilient zone. And so with tracking, what we pay attention to grows. So there are sensations of distress that we have that we can notice pretty quickly, but then there's also sensations of well-being that we also have. And it's choosing to pay attention to the sensations of well-being. So if you imagine this as like a garden, every garden is going to have a certain amount of weeds and things like that, but you're not going to go out and water the weeds. You're going to water the fruit, the vegetables, the flowers, whatever it is that you're growing so they can be nourished. While the weeds may be there and we know that they're going to be there, we want to still water the flowers, the vegetables, and that sort of thing. I'm going to skip this slide, but it's talking about sensations, just being a physical experience in the body, and that we have billions of receptors in our body that help us to notice where these sensations are taking place.
But it's so hard though, honestly, because I do that like with her when she approaches me. When she asks me what I'm doing, I'm like, okay, well, you just do it. And I just walk away. But you know what? I know there are these undocumented workers that can't afford to do that. So it's a different situation. So it's like, sometimes there are people that have limited abilities, whether it's because you're an undocumented worker or because you're Black or whatever. But there are certain areas where like, I can do it. And I hate to say this, I'm a white woman, but I can afford to do it. And I do face off with her. But I know there are people there that work that can't do that. And it makes me very angry. And I don't know what to do.
And what you could choose to do is just demonstrate being in your resilient zone for those folks. You could be a resource for them. And as these situations are occurring, because what I tell people a lot is a dysregulated nervous system cannot regulate a dysregulated nervous system. Somebody has to be regulated. Somebody's nervous system has to be in balance. Somebody has to be in their resilient zone so that others can as well. And so as we talk about these things, once again, we'll have a choice of what to pay attention to on the inside. And as far as tracking, I'm going to invite everybody for a moment. Put your hands together. Put your hands together and rub slowly. Now speed it up. Speed it up. speed it up, and stop. What do you notice?
Warm.
Warmth. All right. Let it go a few more seconds. Now, what do you notice?
Tingling.
Exactly. Tingling, warmth, maybe now a cooler sensation. And that is the long and short of tracking. But we do this also on the inside of our body. So if we were to go back to what Bobby was asking people about the joys in your life and the beauties that you're experiencing and things like that, and you were to talk about some of the things that you were talking about, and I was making a little list. We had everything from children to nature to hiking to a new promotion to dissertation defense, people coming home to even towels, things of that nature. If we were to unpack that a little further, you would notice sensations on the inside of your body after a while. And being able to sit or stay with the sensations that are pleasant or neutral is what we're after. I'm gonna skip sensation words for now, but one of the things that I work with people sometimes, for some people, even sensing pleasant sensations or neutral sensation can be unpleasant and can spark, some things. Maybe they've got a memory or a situation that they experienced something in the past. And so all of this is a choice. And if something gets too distressing, someone can always pause and things like that. But tracking, that's the first skill. The next skill is resourcing. And we've already been on this already. So resourcing, and someone earlier was talking about photographs and looking at photographs, and it just gives them peace. So resource is anything, a person, place, thing, memory, or part of yourself that makes you feel calm, pleasant, peaceful, strong, or even resilient. A resource can be real or imagined. It can be internal or external. So your resource, an internal resource, you may have a great sense of humor, or you may be highly intelligent, or you may be a really good cook. All the that's like an internal resource. External resources are the things that are mentioned in that first bullet point, like a person, place, thing, a memory, a part of yourself, a quote, a favorite movie, a favorite song, something like that. And that exercise that you were doing before, the joys in your life and the beauties and stuff like that, a lot of those things that were mentioned were resources. The questions that I asked in the beginning, what or who uplifts you? What or who gives you strength? What or who helps you get through hard times? Those are resourcing questions. So in the moments when you are being challenged, when you've got a situation on your hands and things like that, being able to take a moment and think about your resource is helpful. That can bring your nervous system back into balance. That can turn down the volume on some of the distress that you may be experiencing. And these are things that people already have. I get excited about resourcing because I'm not like, hey, your resource is going to be this. I'm like, no, tell me what your resource is. Tell me, what person, place, thing, memory makes you feel strong, makes you feel connected, makes you feel peaceful. Music is a big one for me. And I use music as a resource in a couple of different ways. I use music as an energizing resource, and I also use it as a resource that will bring me peace or calm and things of that nature. And it's just that intentional use of the skill that helps me out. The thing that makes resourcing so great is something called resource intensification. So as somebody is telling me about their resource, I ask them 3 or 4 additional questions about that resource. And as that person gives me the details, it expands the sensations, in their body. And that allows them to override, any attention that's going to unpleasant situations. If you get someone talking about something that they love, or someone that they love, or something that they really enjoy doing, watch what happens. Watch their face light up. Watch their body position change. A smile may come on their face or something like that. And I challenge you all to use that. Use it intentionally. I've got what I call a favorite appropriate picture exercise. So I'll ask people in settings like this, pull out your phone, open it up, scroll to your favorite appropriate picture that you have. And then I'll ask them to, if they're in a group or something like that, I'll ask them to share about that. that is a resourcing activity that can be used with intention. We're very connected nowadays. We always have our phones with us. If we leave our phone at home, 9 times out of 10, we might turn around and go back and get it. But you can also, just use it with intention and know that you've got some pictures, or store some pictures in there, whether it's of nature, whether it's of a family member, whether it's of you doing something you love. Maybe it's your pet, maybe it's the sky, but using that opportunity, with intention to help expand your well-being. Resources have many natures. Sometimes people are using resources and maybe it's a loved one that's no longer here, and they may be dealing with some grief or some sadness around that loss, and that's okay. That makes sense. And so, what I do is I just acknowledge that shift, and I'll invite them to remember the pleasant memories that they have with that resource or around that resource. And if that gets too hard, maybe we'll switch to something else. But resourcing is an amazing skill because it just helps you to, go to a certain place in your mind. And like I said, these skills don't keep the storms of life from you, but while the storms are going on, you can be different. A big resource for me, especially during 2020, was nature, being outside in nature. My favorite color is green. So every time I would go outside, I would try to find the different variations of the color green in nature. And just that exercise in and of itself was just calming to me. And it helped me tremendously. So I could have a terrible day or something like that. But getting outside and going on a walk, feeling the breeze and being in nature was helpful. It was soothing to my nervous system. And so I could go and I could interact and remember that relational domain, that circle, I could interact with my loved ones and not, be irritable or angry or, not the best version of Kevin. So using the skills so I can show up well, using the skills so that you can have great days at work, despite the foolishness that may be happening around you, using them with intention. And I'm going to go through grounding and then we can stop for questions there. The skill of grounding is so cool. So grounding involves the direct contact of the body or part of the body with something that provides support in the present moment. That's because gravitational security is the foundation upon which we build our interpersonal relationships. So if you feel like you are literally on a roller coaster in life, you are not going to be able to, build the best relationships. But when we're grounded, we have a sense of self in relationship to present time and space. We're not worried about the past or the future. People need grounding when they are worried about the past or something that's going to happen in the future. And you can ground in many ways. You can ground simply by walking and paying attention to your steps, paying attention to your feet connecting with the ground. You can stand against the wall, or you can lie down on a surface or float in water. You can sit on a chair, the sofa, or the ground, or you can ground through a part of your body like your hands or your feet. So right now I'm sitting at a table and I just put my hand on the table and I notice the support that I feel from the table. Or if I were standing, I could stand up and just notice my feet connected to the ground. Whenever I'm having conversations with one of my sisters and she may be getting a little bit activated, I'll just stop and I'll say, "Can you feel your feet?" And she'll laugh because she'll know exactly what I'm doing. But simply noticing your feet being connected to the ground can help balance your nervous system. So when you're getting aggravated and someone's talking to you or talking at you, or you're, in a conversation with someone and it may not be going the best, just noticing that you can feel your feet, or you can reach down and touch the table and notice the support that the table is giving you, or you can lean against the wall and notice that contact in your body. If you're sitting in a chair right now, you can notice the support that you're getting from the chair, or your back being against the back of the chair. Or if you're lying down, notice the support, the connection between your legs and whatever surface you're lying down on. All of these things can help to bring balance to your nervous system. It's just that we can use them intentionally, and we can be walking and paying attention to our feet touching the ground And it's amazing that that is very helpful when it comes to just our nervous system. Just some caution with grounding is anything else. Some children and adults have experienced physical and emotional trauma, so they may have difficulty in the beginning with the skill of grounding. And grounding can increase sensations connected to a traumatic memory. So if it does that, if you feel some dysregulation or some activation because of grounding, you can just stop. You can resource. You can think about what or who uplifts you, what or who gives you strength or helps you get through hard times, and use that as your skill in that moment. So I'm going to stop there and just open up the floor for questions, comments, concerns. I love talking about this. One of the things that you can do, there is an app called iChill. It's a free app. Looks like this. It's a free app. You can download it on your Apple or Android device, and it walks you through the skills of the community resiliency model. It's available in English and Spanish. So iChill. The initial picture looks like people standing on the globe holding hands, and there's a sun behind it. I recommend the app. There's a good overview of the community resiliency model, and then there's skills. You even have a place in this app to put your resiliency pictures. So if you have resources and things like that, you can actually add them into this app so that you can use them with intention. So questions? There's way more to talk about with this model, but just tonight, this is what we had time for. Hopefully we can have a part 2 to this session sometime in the future.
Where would I go to learn more?
To learn more, you can send me an email. There is the website to the company I work for is traumaresourceinstitute.com.
Okay.
So you can Google the Trauma Resource Institute, and you can learn lots more on the website.
Okay, great. Thanks.
You're very welcome. So last year, one of the good things about the pandemic is forcing us to go virtual. So with some of these presentations that I do, last year we reached 14 different countries and 40 states. So there's lots of people that are being exposed to this model, and it's a great time.
So is everything that we went over tonight, is that in the app or just bits and pieces of it in the app?
Oh, all of it is in the app. Everything that we went over
app.
tonight. So from the resilient zone to the 3 skills, and then you can learn about the other 3 skills from the app as well.
Okay. Cool.
Do I hear children in your background?
There was, my daughter was talking. Yeah,
That's awesome.
Always a lively place here.
Great.
Hey, do you think this is an inner child talking?
And we're good to go.
All right. Well, thank you so much for having me, and everyone be well.
All right.
Thank
Thank you,
you so
Kevin.
much for joining
Thanks,
us,
Kevin.
Thank you.
And I will include the link to the Trauma Resource Institute and the iChill app in the recap email tomorrow so that y'all will have it readily accessible. Thank you so
Awesome.
much, Kevin.
You're welcome. Have a good evening.
And I will see all the rest of you back in the main room.
Peace.
I don't think financial education has quite wrapped up yet.
What time do we